So it's a Grape Explorer talking about today, where we are back to our Bordeaux series, where, if you're not familiar with the format, we try to identify a property that we call Grand Cru Classé, and we talk about the past, the present, and the future, which of course is very, very important in Bordeaux today, especially since we're zooming in on the 2023 vintage. But what we wanted to talk about today is Chateau Lafite. And Chateau Lafite is a first gross, considered one of the finest properties in all of Bordeaux. And this so happens to be a 2019 six-pack, original wood. So, something I wanted to talk about, if you're not familiar with this property here, we got Pauillac, and you can see the proximity to the River Gion, which is right here. So they always say the best wines in Bordeaux are near the river. So that's a highlight for what we feel is Pauillac. But just let me explain a little bit about Pauillac. Pauillac are considered to be one of the tops of the left bank for a number of reasons. But one interesting reason is there are a lot of iron ore deposits there and a lot of graphite. So when you smell the wines, the classic smell for always a Pauillac is going to be this lead pencil kind of smell. I know as a child we always remember using our lead pencils, and we could smell that lead. That actually comes out in the wines. So doesn't come out in the wines in the beginning, it needs a little bit of time. So, but on a recent trip to Chateau Lafite, had a chance to go to the property. We had a very detailed trip, which was very fascinating because I had not had this kind of a trip before. So they showed us obviously the winemaking barrel room, which was first class. Then we took the tour, and at the end of the tour, our guide, who was the top sommelier there, took us, and there was some steps that are going up. And so he basically said, we are walking to heaven. And I had no idea what he was talking about, but I was following, and all along the sides of these steps were just huge, gigantic bottles of Lafite Jeroboams. As soon as we got to the top of the steps, I was like, oh my God, but it was the cellars of Chateau Lafite where they actually keep all of the old vintages. They have vintages going back to the 1850s, 1860s Magnums. And I was quite impressed with this property, first of all, but quite impressed with the cellars. And I'm always asking questions. I asked this chap, I said, so you actually opened some of these bottles, 1860, 1870? He says, yes, that's my job, is to open the bottles, to make sure that the wines are good to serve to the family. And basically, so I said, so you've tasted almost every wine here? He said, absolutely. I've tasted almost every vintage of Lafite, which I was quite impressed with after all. Then our final highlight of the tasting was we went to a tasting room, and who should be there was the managing director there, which is named Eric Kohl. And Eric Kohl is an interesting chap, so we got a chance to taste, and what was presented in front of us was the 2000 vintage. So I had a chance to retaste this wine after many years. Hadn't had a chance to taste it, and it's just coming into its own. So that's kind of the highlight that I wanted to talk about with Chateau Lafite. These wines are definitely not wines that show young. You have to really put them away in the cellar. As you can see, this came directly out of the cellar because it has the bands and everything on them, which is quite unique. But we want to zoom right in here and show you Ferret's book on Chateau Lafite, which is right here, if we want to point that out. And we had a chance to taste the 2022, and we got a chance to meet Chateau Rothschild, who is now 36 years old. She is the youngest person to be running a first growth property. So we talk about the future. The Lafite Rothschild is well in hand. But I did want to talk about the 22 vintage because I had a chance to taste it. While we're zooming in on this property again, I wanted to read a little bit of the notes that I took here. So deep tart color, garnet, very good lift on the nose with cassis cedar spice tones. On the palate, you have big fruit structure, mineral tone accents, lovely fresh finish in the back of the palate. Cassis, long tannins and acidity. I gave this wine 97, 99 points with a plus because, first of all, Lafite, out of all of the first grows, does not show well when we first taste these wines. They need to really strut their stuff after the wines are put into bottle. I'm sure that the notes coming through out of the bottle will start cracking that 99 plateau. But at the same time, this is a stellar vintage, 22 vintage, of course, one of the best vintages that I've ever tasted, memories of. And I think that we are going to see a Chateau Lafite in 2022 that will be a memorable wine. Again, we want to talk about Chateau Lafite today because it's one of the best of the best. And again, this is David Kohl, the Grape Explorer, talking about wine and talking about great Grand Cru Classé.